More than 100 Chinese Navy and Coast Guard vessels have been spotted moving through key visual waters, down into the heavily contested South China Sea.
What happens when the busiest trade route on Earth turns into a high-stakes naval chess match? That's the question hanging over Asia right now. In a fresh wave of breaking developments, Chinese warships and Coast Guard vessels have surged back into the disputed waters of the South China Sea, shadowing U.S. naval movements and circling flashpoints like Scarborough Shoal. One regional security official put it bluntly, "This isn't signaling anymore. This is positioning." Almost overnight, Manila is on edge. Allies are picking up the phone, and those once calm blue waters are starting to feel dangerously crowded. Picture this. A stretch of ocean that carries nearly $3 trillion in global trade every single year, now packed with destroyers, patrol ships, and combat aircraft flying just a little too close for comfort. This isn't some far-off maritime argument. This is the route your fuel, food, electronics, and energy supplies move through. And once again, Scarborough Shoal, just a short sail from the Philippine coast, is ground zero. China is flexing. The Philippines is responding by tightening coordination with the United States and regional partners. And in a place like this, one wrong move doesn't just make headlines, it rewrites the security map. That's why this moment feels different, because this isn't about a single patrol or a one-off provocation. It's about who gets to write the rules at sea. Beijing's deployments challenge freedom of navigation, test international law, and push directly against U.S. presence in the Indo-Pacific. For the Philippines, it's a stark reminder that sovereignty isn't theoretical. It's defended in real time, under real pressure. The South China Sea isn't simmering anymore. It's boiling, and the world is watching to see who blinks first. Now let's zoom out, because none of this is random, and none of it started yesterday. The South China Sea has been contested for decades. China, the Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, and Taiwan all claim overlapping islands, reefs, and waters in one of the most strategically valuable maritime zones on the planet. On paper, these disputes are supposed to be governed by the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, which lays out territorial waters, exclusive economic zones, and maritime rights. In reality, power often matters more than paperwork. What should be clean lines on a map have turned into gray zones, patrolled by coast guards, naval fleets, and surveillance aircraft. When you look at a map of the region, those red dashed lines wrapping around most of the sea tell the story. They're China's claim, and they cut deep into everyone else's backyard. The legal battle hit a turning point in 2016 when an international tribunal in The Hague delivered a landmark ruling in favor of the Philippines. The court flatly rejected China's sweeping 9-line claim, saying it had no legal basis under UNCLOS. For Manila, it was a diplomatic win, a legal weapon that proved international law was on its side. For Beijing, it was a line in the sand. China dismissed the ruling as null and void and has acted ever since as if it never happened. That legal standoff still shapes every confrontation we're seeing today. The Philippines cites the ruling in protests and speeches. Chinese ships continue operating like the map never changed. Layered on top of all this is the constant presence of the U.S. Navy. Washington doesn't see the South China Sea as a regional squabble. It sees it as a global test. Through regular freedom of navigation operations, or FONOPs, U.S. warships sail close to contested features, including recent patrols near Scarborough Shoal, to challenge what it calls excessive maritime claims. The message is old school and unmistakable. The seas stay open, no matter who tries to fence them off. And every time an American ship shows up, Chinese vessels trail close behind, turning the South China Sea into a live standoff where law, history, and raw power collide. Now here's where it stops being abstract. This isn't just talk anymore. It's steel in the water and aircraft in the sky. Over the past few days, China has deployed serious naval and air power into waters claimed by the Philippines, and the details matter. guided missile destroyers and frigates, not symbolic patrol boats, have been operating near sensitive areas. These are high-end combat ships built for air defense, anti-ship warfare, and long-range operations. In other words, this deployment is meant to be seen and calculated. Even more striking is what's happening overhead. China has flown H-6 strategic bombers capable of carrying YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship missiles with an estimated strike range of up to 500 kilometers. That's not defensive positioning. That's a reminder of reach. From those distances, major naval groups, ports, and sea lanes are well within potential strike zones. Stripped down to basics, the message is simple. We can hit far, and we can hit fast. Officially, Beijing is downplaying it. China's Southern Theater Command calls the patrols routine, while accusing Manila of colluding with outside forces, a familiar phrase for working too closely with the United States and its allies. According to Beijing, all of this is about preserving peace and stability. It's the same playbook. Assert dominance, deny escalation, blame the other side. Old script, new hardware. At its core, China says it's defending sovereignty and responding to provocations by rival claimants and outside powers. But the scale, capability, and timing of these deployments tell a deeper story, one that's less about routine patrols and more about control. And that's the real question now. Who controls the sea? And who decides where the line is drawn? This isn't just about defending territorial claims anymore. It's about shaping behavior, intimidating rivals, and drawing red lines in real time. In the South China Sea, China isn't asking to be noticed. It's demanding control. Washington didn't hesitate. And it responded the way it always does, by showing up, staying visible, and refusing to blink. The U.S. Navy has moved Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers alongside littoral combat ships into waters near disputed shoals, locking in what officials call a persistent presence in the region. These are not symbolic sailbys. Arleigh Burkes are among the most powerful surface warships in the world, loaded with Aegis air defense systems, cruise missiles, and advanced anti-submarine weapons. Their presence sends a message that doesn't need to be shouted. The U.S. is willing to operate in contested waters and stay there. At the core of this posture is freedom of navigation operations, a mission Washington treats almost like doctrine. U.S. officials insist these patrols are fully legal, routine, and not aimed at any one country, even though everyone knows exactly who's being challenged. One Pentagon spokesperson cut through the diplomacy and said it flat out. China's maritime claims do not deter us. Translated into plain English, the message is old school and blunt. No country gets to redraw the rules of the ocean by force. But beneath the tough talk is a dangerous reality. The South China Sea has already seen close calls, aggressive shadowing, risky maneuvers, and even collisions involving Chinese vessels operating at high speed. Now mix in U.S. destroyers, Chinese warships, bombers overhead, and Coast Guard ships weaving between them, and the margin for error shrinks to almost nothing. One misjudged turn, one radar contact misunderstood, one overly aggressive intercept. That's all it would take to spark a crisis nobody actually planned. That's the uncomfortable truth behind deterrence. It works until it doesn't. In waters this crowded, where pride, power, and patrol routes collide, escalation doesn't require intent. It only takes one bad moment. For the Philippines, this isn't a theory or a big power chess match. This is happening right off its shoreline. And Manila's response has been direct, public, and calculated. On the diplomatic front, the Philippine government has moved fast, issuing formal protests and filing official complaints with the Chinese embassy over both Beijing's rhetoric and its expanding maritime presence. Officials have pushed back hard against claims of collusion, making one thing clear: defending sovereign rights is not provocation. From Malacanang to the Department of Foreign Affairs, the message hasn't wavered. China's actions are being challenged, on the record, in writing, and through international channels. No quiet acceptance, no silent retreat. At sea, the posture has tightened as well. the Philippine Navy and Coast Guard have increased patrols across the West Philippine Sea, keeping closer watch on contested zones and maintaining presence near sensitive features. Manila knows it can't match China ship for ship, but in these waters, visibility itself has become a form of resistance. Every patrol sends the same message. These waters aren't empty, and sovereignty doesn't disappear just because the other side is bigger. The Philippines is making that point quietly, but consistently. At the diplomatic level, Manila is playing the long game. Coordination with the United States remains central, especially through joint military exercises, intelligence sharing, and operational planning under existing defense agreements. At the same time, the Philippines is working the regional angle, engaging ASEAN partners, pushing for consultations, unity, and a rules-based approach to maritime security. It's a careful balancing act, strengthening alliances without lighting the fuse on open escalation. The tone from Manila is measured but firm, no chest thumping, no backing down either. In a region where silence is often mistaken for consent, the Philippines is sending a clear signal. It's present, it's watching, and it intends to hold its ground. What's happening in the South China Sea doesn't stop at any one border. The shockwaves spread across the entire region. For ASEAN, this moment is a stress test. Some member states are uneasy about being pulled into a showdown between major powers and prefer quiet diplomacy and strategic ambiguity. Others, especially countries with their own claims, are increasingly vocal, warning that unchecked pressure today becomes the new normal tomorrow. That tension exposes a familiar ASEAN dilemma: consensus versus credibility. Every flare-up highlights how hard it is to speak with one voice when national interests, security concerns, and deep economic ties to China all pull in different directions. And the economic stakes only raise the temperature. The South China Sea isn't just strategically important, it's economically critical. These waters carry shipping lanes and energy routes that keep East Asian factories running, fuel markets supplied, and global supply chains moving. Any serious disruption, whether from military standoffs or rising insurance risks, would hit ports, prices, and production lines almost immediately. For economies built on just-in-time delivery, even short-term instability can turn into long-term uncertainty. Then there's the most immediate risk of all: safety at sea. These waters are getting crowded, and not just with warships. Naval vessels, Coast Guard cutters, and maritime militia are operating in close quarters, often at high speed and under political pressure. Every aggressive maneuver, every close shadowing incident increases the chance of an accident. And in this environment, accidents don't stay accidents for long. One collision, one misread move, one bad call. That's all it would take to kick off an escalation nobody planned, but everyone would be forced to deal with. Put simply, the South China Sea is no longer just a disputed zone. It's becoming a regional fault line. And the longer tensions simmer, the harder it is for governments, markets, and mariners to pretend this is business as usual. Beneath all the naval posturing and military muscle is a quieter battlefield: international law. And that fight may matter more than any single ship deployment. The legal backbone of these disputes is the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea. Under UNCLOS, coastal states are granted defined maritime rights, including territorial waters and exclusive economic zones stretching up to 200 nautical miles. This framework anchors the Philippines' legal position in the West Philippine Sea. Manila argues its claims aren't based on power or ancient history, but on written international law recognized by most of the world. In theory, UNCLOS is meant to remove ambiguity. In practice, it's become the very thing under dispute. China operates under a different interpretation. Beijing asserts historical rights that it says existed long before UNCLOS, and that those rights justify its broad presence across much of the South China Sea. This view was sharply challenged by the 2016 international ruling, but China continues to treat its claims as non-negotiable. From Beijing's perspective, Patrols and deployments aren't violations. They're enforcement. Law, in this view, bends to history and to power. The United States rejects that logic outright. Washington maintains that freedom of navigation and overflight are protected under international law, regardless of competing sovereignty claims. That's the legal foundation behind U.S. freedom of navigation operations. These missions aren't about who owns a reef or a shoal. They're about stopping any one country from turning international waters into restricted zones. Every faux naupie is a legal argument, made with a warship. And that's the core tension. One side treats the law as fixed rules, the other treats it as flexible history. Until those visions line up, or one clearly wins, the South China Sea will remain more than a military standoff. It will be a legal battle, fought patrol by patrol, ship by ship. Strip away the press releases and the naval muscle flexing, and what's left is a tense strategic math problem, with no guarantee the answer stays clean. One possible path is de-escalation. That means sustained diplomacy, active military hotlines, and confidence-building measures meant to lower the temperature. Publicly, everyone says this is what they want. Fewer risky maneuvers, clearer communication, a return to controlled competition. But let's be honest, de-escalation in the South China Sea doesn't mean the ships go home. It means tensions are managed, not solved. It means restraint becomes a daily choice, not a permanent solution. And that's hard to sustain. The more likely near-term outcome is a long standoff, constant patrols, shadowing operations, shows of force that stop just short of crossing the line. Over time, friction becomes normal. Each side learns the other's habits, limits, and red lines. On the surface, it looks stable. Underneath, it's draining, expensive, and fragile. One political crisis somewhere else, or one overly aggressive captain at sea, could shatter that balance overnight. The most dangerous path is escalation. And the terrifying part is that it wouldn't have to be deliberate. A collision no one intended. An aircraft intercept that goes wrong. A radar signal misread in the heat of the moment. Any of those could trigger rapid military responses before diplomacy even gets a chance to breathe. In an environment thick with nationalism and alliance commitments, small incidents can spiral fast, faster than leaders can rein them in. Making all of this riskier is the accelerating pace of military technology. Long-range missiles, real-time surveillance drones, networked sensors, and rapid response systems are shrinking decision-making windows. Commanders see more, track faster, and react quicker. That sounds stabilizing until it isn't. Speed leaves less room for human judgment, and in contested waters, seconds can turn into strategic consequences. Bottom line, the South China Sea isn't drifting toward resolution. It's hardening into a test of endurance, discipline, and crisis management. The real danger isn't war by design, it's war by miscalculation. And history shows that's how the worst conflicts often begin. Zoom out, and it becomes clear this isn't really about reefs and shoals anymore. The South China Sea is now a front line in the US-China strategic rivalry. Every patrol, every statement, every joint exercise feeds into a much bigger contest over influence, credibility, and leadership in the Indo-Pacific. For Washington, presence equals commitment to allies, to international law, and to an open maritime order. For Beijing, pushing back is about reshaping that order and proving it can no longer be dictated from outside the region. The result? Alliances are tightening. Defense cooperation is deepening, and neutral ground is shrinking fast. Multilateral diplomacy is supposed to be the release valve, but progress has been slow. UN-linked forums and regional mechanisms offer space for dialogue, confidence building, and rule setting. Still, consensus remains elusive. Competing interests, economic dependence, and strategic caution water everything down. Take the long-promised South China Sea Code of Conduct. Always discussed, inching forward, but never quite delivered. Even so, these forums matter. In a crisis-prone environment, slow diplomacy beats silence every time. Military deterrence may prevent immediate conflict, But only sustained dialogue and respect for international norms can prevent long-term instability. Hotlines, maritime communication protocols, and regular consultations won't settle sovereignty disputes, but they can stop misunderstandings from becoming flashpoints. In a region this tense, talking isn't weakness, it's damage control. What we're seeing now is a clear jump in geopolitical intensity. China's expanded naval deployments, America's firm maritime posture, and the Philippines' elevated state of alert all point to a South China Sea that's more crowded, more contested, and more consequential than ever. This isn't a temporary surge. It's a new normal forming in real time. The risks are serious and obvious. Military operations now overlap with strategic rivalry and unresolved legal claims, creating a volatile mix where one miscalculation could carry regional, even global consequences. Trade routes, energy flows, alliance credibility, international law. All of it is on the line. When great power competition plays out at sea, the margin for error is razor thin. The path forward is narrow, but it's clear. Stronger diplomacy, greater transparency, consistent adherence to lawful maritime conduct. These aren't optional anymore. They're essential. The South China Sea has always been a crossroads of commerce and culture. Whether it becomes a corridor of cooperation or a theater of confrontation depends on the choices being made right now, while the ships are still maneuvering and the lines haven't yet been crossed.